Hello, welcome to today's edition of the Daf 34 Amud A. Actually finishing the Masechta today, the tractate. I'll do the Daf and I'll do the summary and the Hadran. I think that's it. 1 second, I've lost the page. Obviously I can't do a catch because there's no minion here, so let's go. With regard to a provisional gift offering, Asham Taloi, a sin offering is brought by one who unwittingly transgresses the prohibition and is punishable by courage when violated intentionally. An uncertain gift offering is brought for the same transgression, but in a situation where it is uncertain whether one actually committed the sin. For example, if there are 2 pieces of fat before someone, one permitted and one forbidden, and he is unsure which he ate, he brings an uncertain guilt offering until the facts are clarified. If he subsequently learns that he did sin, he brings a sin offering. Brought by one who is uncertain whether he committed a sin that renders him liable to bring a sin offering. If he discovers he did not sin, the offering should be burned. The early commentaries explain that the Mishnah is referring to a case where one became aware that he did not actually sin between the slaughter of the offering and the sprinkling of its blood. So Rashi and Rambam save commentary on the Mishnah. Others maintain that the Mishnah is dealing with a situation where the guilt offering or sin offering of a bird was disqualified. And Rabbi Yehuda holds that such offerings are buried because they are dissimilar to the offerings brought during the inauguration of the tabernacle, which is a source obligation to burn offerings. Ravi's commentary on Torah's Kohanim, Rashi in Pesachim 28a provides a similar explanation, i.e. that the dispute applies to a guilt offering, and certainly that would disqualify. See also Tosfot Yosef Dad, as its legal status is that of an unfit offering. Rabbi Yehuda says it shall be buried. A sin offering of a bird that comes due to an uncertainty. So what does that mean? Chatas ha'of labar al hasafek. A sin offering of a bird brought due to uncertainty is burned. They heard Hilchot Besulei Habakdashin 1910 and Sefer Karbonot Hilchot Mesurei Kapar 1:6. E.g., in the case of a woman who miscarried and she is uncertain whether it was a fetus, shall be burned, as it may not be eaten due to the uncertainty and because the nape of the neck was pinched and it was not slaughtered. Rabbi Yehuda says, one should cast into the temple courtyard drain, as the young bird will decompose and be drawn into the stream outside the temple. The principle is, all items that are burned shall not be burned. Kol hanik bowen no yourself with a all items that are buried shall not be burned, and all items that are burned shall not be buried. Although it would appear that one is acting stringently by burning an item that is buried, this entails a leniency with regard to its ashes. So the ashes of an item that is buried are prohibited. The Rambam Sefer Avodah Hilchot Besulei Makdashin 1914. And all items that are burned shall not be buried. What does that mean? Rashi explains that items that must be burned may not be buried due to a concern that one might find the item and consume it. Some later commentaries question the necessity of Rashi's explanation, noting that the verse states explicitly that the mitzvah is to burn them. Consequently, even if there were no concern that one might eat it, e.g. when one breaks it into small pieces and disperses them into the wind, one cannot simply ignore the mitzvah. Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Other later commentaries explain Rashi is referring specifically to ritually impure Teruma, God to which there is no specific mitzvah to burn it. And that's Rabbi Yeshia Pick, Kehilas Yaakov Yosef Dad. Rabbi Yehuda says, if one wishes to impose a stringency upon himself by burning items that will be buried, he is permitted to burn them. The rabbi said to Rabbi Yehuda, one is not permitted to change the method of destruction, as this could lead to a leniency, since it is permitted to derive benefit from the ashes of items that require burning, whereas it is not permitted to derive benefit from the ashes of items that require burial. Among the items from which benefit is prohibited, the Mishnah states that the hair of a Nazarite should be buried. With regard to this halacha, Tavi raised a contradiction before Rav Naaman. We learned in the Mishnah that the hair of a Nazarite shall be buried, but one can raise a contradiction from another Mishnah, or the 3:3. One who weaves one sit, the distance between one's index and middle fingers, of the wool of a firstborn animal. What does that mean? If one weaves one sit of wool from a firstborn animal into a garment, that garment must be burned. If one weaves any manner of other sacrificial animals into a garment, the garment is prohibited. It's really in according to the mission tractate, all at 3.3, and the Rambam's interpretation of the discussion of the Gemara. 3.13. See Mahavi Kokas Kishav Mishnah there. From which deriving benefits prohibited in accordance with the halacha of sacrificial animals in a garment, the garment shall be ignited. Similarly, if one weaves from the hair of a Nazarite or from the hair of a firstborn donkey in a sack, the sack shall be ignited. If one weaves into a sack one seed of hair from the hair of a Nazarite or from a firstborn donkey, the sack must be burned. Rambam Sefer Voda, Hilchot B'Tzulim Doshin, 1912. See that Ma'avi Kokas and the case of Mishnah there. Rav Naaman said to Tavi, there is no contradiction. Here, the ruling of the Mishnah teaches that the hair of a Nazarite is buried. It says regard to Nazarite who became ritually impure, and who must therefore shave his head and begin a new Nazariteship. And there, the ruling of the Mishnah states that the hair is burned. It states with regard to the hair of a richly pure Nazarite. Some early commentaries explain that the hair of a richly pure Nazarite is burned because of the verse, and put it on the fire, and that is under the sacrifice of peace offering in Numbers 6:18. But according to the Rambam, which is a Nazarite's hair among those prohibited items that are burned, the burning of the head is apparently not only a fulfillment of a mitzvah associated with the Nazariteship, but a simple requirement in his own right, and that's from the Yosef Dad, who shaves his head upon successful completion of his Nazariteship. At this stage, his hair is burned in accordance with the verses, and this is the law of the Nazarite when the days of his consecration are fulfilled. And the Nazarite shall shave his consecrated head at the door of the tent of meeting, and shall take the hair of his consecrated head and put it on the fire, under the sacrifice of the peace offerings. Numbers 6:13-18. Harry said to Rav Naaman, you have answered the contradiction with regard to a Nazarite and a Nazarite, but the contradiction with regard to a firstborn donkey and a firstborn donkey still poses a difficulty, as the Mishnah here states that the animal and its hair are buried, whereas the Mishnah interpreted all that teaches that its hair is burned. Rav Naaman was silent and said nothing to Tavi about the contradiction. Instead he said to him, have you heard anything with regard to this from others? Tavi said to him, this is what Rav Sheshet said in response to the contradiction. Here, where the Mishnah states that the hair of the firstborn donkey is burned, it is referring to a case where the hair was weaved in a sack. Whereas there, when the Mishnah rules that the hair is buried, it's referring to the hair itself, by itself. Rashi explains that as a sack does not disintegrate quickly even when it is buried in the ground, if such a sack woven with the hair of a firstborn donkey or Nazarite was buried, someone might find it and derive benefit from it. Therefore, the halacha is that the sack must be buried. But there is no concern with regard to the hair itself when it is woven into a fabric, and therefore it is buried. Commentators add that although buried hair does not disintegrate quickly, there is no concern that one might derive benefit from individual hairs as they are scattered in the ground, and no one would bother to collect them in order to derive benefit from them. By contrast, a person might go into the trouble of removing a sack from the ground, as it is already woven, and one can benefit from it immediately for Israel. Additionally, it is uncommon for people to dig up a burial site for hair, but it is less rare to dig in search of garments and the like. And that is Rabbi Shimshon of Sanz. The Gemara notes that these responses of Rav Naaman and Rav Sheshet were also stated by other sages. Rav Yossi, son of Rabbi Hanina, says, here in Chapter Orla, the Mishnah is referring to a case where the hair of a Nazarite or firstborn donkey was weaved in a sack, where there it is referring to the hair of a Nazarite or firstborn donkey itself. And Rabbi Elazar says, here in Chapter Orla, the Mishnah is referring to a richly pure Nazarite, and there the Mishnah is referring to the hair of a richly impure Nazarite. And Naaman said to Rav Sheshet, even if there is a difference between the hair itself and the hair weaved in a sack, let the hair that was weaved in a sack be nullified by the majority, i.e. the other materials weaved into the sack, and therefore the sack need not be burned. Rav Papa said, the Mishnah is dealing with a case where one used the prohibited hair to weave an ornamental design of a bird into the sack. Besiposa. According to some commentaries, if one simply wove the hair into a sack without forming any design, it is nullified by the majority of the printed material which the sack is woven to the Rosh. The Rambam apparently rules that such an item is always prohibited. Such a design is considered significant in its own right, and consequently is not nullified by the majority. The Gemara asks, why should the entire sack be burned on account of the bird design? Then remove any design weaved into the sack with prohibited hair, Marine materials should be permitted. Rabbi Yirmiyah said, in according to the opinion is dismissed entirely order. In according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who said that one who wished to impose a stringency upon himself by burning items that are to be buried, he's permitted to do so. Rabbi Naaman said to him, we raised the difficulty that one should remove the bird designs, and you established that the mission is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Even according to Rabbi Yehuda, in a case where one can remove the prohibited portion of the sack and use the rest of it, why would he burn it, even as a stringency? Rabbi Yirmiyah responded, this is what I meant to say. If it is possible to remove from the sack, fine, and if not, there is a third answer to the contradiction that Tavi made before Rabbi Naaman. There was the mission according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who said that if one wished to impose a stringency upon himself by burning the items that are to be buried, he is permitted to do so. The mission teaches, and these are the items that are burned: leavened bread. The Gemara comments, the Master said in the mission that leavened bread on Passover shall be burned. If so, the Tana told us an unattributed mission according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who said that the eradication of leavened bread can be performed only by means of burning. But contrary to the Rabbi's rule that leavened bread may be eradicated through any manner of destruction, the Mishnah further teaches that richly impure teruma shall be burned, and with regard to all and diverse kinds of food crops sown in a vineyard, those items whose appropriate manner of destruction is to be burned shall be burned, and those items whose appropriate manner of destruction is to be burned shall be buried. The Gemara elaborates how so. What is an item whose appropriate manner of destruction is to be burned? Foods are items whose appropriate manner of destruction is by burning, and liquids are items whose appropriate manner of destruction is by burial. The Mishnah also teaches a sin offering of the bird that comes due to an uncertainty shall be burned. Rabbi Yehuda says that one should cast it into the temple courtyard drain. With regard to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara knows that it is taught in the Bible that Rabbi Yehuda says, with regard to a sin offering of a bird that comes due to an uncertainty, one should cast it into the temple courtyard drain. And how is this performed? He severs the animal limb by limb and tosses all the limbs into the drain, and each limb rolls out continuously with the liquid in the drain to the Kidron River outside Jerusalem. Kidron. And there's a picture here of an area view of Temple Mount and Kidron River. The Kidron River is a stream located on the southern side of the Temple Mount. In the temple there were channels and drains that were used for removing dirty water and remaining blood of offerings, which were feed into pipes that led into the Kidron River. There's also a picture here of the Kidron Valley. The Mishnah teaches that all items that are buried shall not be burned, and all items that are burned shall not be buried. The Gemara asks, what is the reason? Matama, the items that are buried may not be burned. The Gemara responds, this is because with regard to items that are buried, the ashes are prohibited. With regard to items that are burned, the ashes are permitted. What does that mean? The ashes of all items that are buried are prohibited. The ashes of all consecrated items that are buried are permitted, except for the ashes removed from the outer and inner altars, and the ashes removed from the candelabrum. The Rambam Sefer Roda Hilchim B'Sunei Makdashin 19.3. Some later commentaries conclude from here that according to Rabbi Shimon, the ashes of non-sacred animals that are slaughtered in the temple courtyard are prohibited by the fact that he holds that such animals are burned. This is based on Rashi's explanation that they are burned by rabbinic decree due to concern that one might confuse them with sacrificial animals that became disqualified, which must be burned by Torah law. Since the decree of the sages serves to render the halacha more stringent than by Torah law, the more lenient the ashes must be prohibited like those of items which are actually buried. And as from the Sefer scrolls, Sefer HaMiknah, Yosef Dat. Accordingly, due to a concern that one who burns an item that should be buried might derive benefit from the ashes, the sages prohibited the burning of any item that is buried. The Gemara asks, and what is the halacha with regard to items that are buried with that the ashes are prohibited? But isn't it taught in a Braita with regard to the blood of a menstruating woman and the flesh of a corpse, which normally render one richly impure, whether they are dry or wet? In a case where they dried up or crumbled, what does that mean? If the flesh of a corpse dried up and turned to crumbs, is richly pure. Tumas made 310. Richly pure. What? Is it not correct to infer from the Braita that they are richly pure and one is permitted to benefit from them, despite the fact that a corpse is an item that is buried? The Gemara rejects this inference. No, the Braita means that they are pure only in the sense that they do not render one richly impure, but it is nevertheless prohibited to provide benefit from them. Rav Pinchas raised an objection from another bite with regard to a burnt offering of a bird whose blood was squeezed. What does this mean? One is liable for misuse of a sin offering of a bird from the moment it is consecrated until its blood is sprinkled on the altar. Once its blood has been sprinkled, the halacha of misuse no longer applies to the bird, although it is prohibited to derive benefit from its crop or feathers. One derived benefit from them at this stage is not liable for misuse. That's the Rambam Sefer Hilchot Me'ila 2:6. Onto the wall of the altar in the purple manner, its crop and its feathers, which do not ascend upon the altar, have been removed from the halacha of misuse. What is it not correct to infer from this that they have been removed entirely from the halacha of misuse and are not consecrated, and therefore one is permitted to derive benefit from them, despite the fact that the crop and feathers are buried, as they are tossed to the eastern side of the altar and are swallowed in their place. Evidently, permitted to derive benefit from items that are buried. The Gemara rejects this claim. No, the Brisa means that they have been removed from the halacha of misuse, but one is nevertheless prohibited to derive benefit from them. The Gemara asks, and is it the halacha with regard to consecrated items that are burned that the ashes are permitted? But isn't it taught in a Brisa with regard to all prohibited items that must be burned, the ashes are permitted, except for wood from a tree used as part of idolatrous rites, a shira, and the ash of consecrated property is prohibited forever. But before summarizing the question, Rav explains why the Brisa teaches the halacha regarding the shira and consecrated property separately, and the Tana did not combine them into one phrase and teach them together, because an ashira can become permitted, as it has the option of nullification by a Gentile, whereas consecrated property has never had the option of nullification. The Gemara concludes this question, and even the Brisa teaches that the ash of consecrated property is prohibited forever. Rami Bar Hama said, in general it is permitted to have benefit from the ash of burnt consecrated property, but this is the halacha either in a case where the consecrated property has been disqualified in some manner, as in the Mishnah, when its sanctity is weakened, or in a case where one would be liable for misuse of consecrated property when burning it. In such a situation, it is the misuse which causes the consecrated property to become non-sacred. By contrast, the Brisa is dealing with a case where the ash remains prohibited. For example, if a fire fell by itself under consecrated wood, since it cannot be known who burned the wood, as there is no person who misused the wood in order that its ash should change to non-sacred status, the ash is therefore prohibited. Rav Shemaiah said, when this Brisa was taught, it was taught with regard to the removal of the ashes every morning, i.e. the rite in which the priest removes some of the ashes upon the altar and places them on the ground beside the altar. In this instance, the halacha is that the ash is prohibited forever, as it is taught in the Brisa with regard to the removal of the ashes. The verse states, and he shall take up the ashes to which the fire consumed the burnt offering on the altar, and he shall put them beside the altar in Leviticus 6:3. The term, and he shall put them when the ashes are removed from the altar and placed outside the city, they should be placed gently on the ground so as not to scatter them, as derived from the verse, and he shall put them. This ruling in accordance with the Rambam's explanation of this Brisa, Rambam Sefer Avodah Hilchot Tamidim Sofrim 2:15, and see the Rambam in the Kesef Mishnah there. In the case he shall place them gently rather than cast them down. Additionally, the emphasis on them in the term, and he shall put them, teaches they should put all of them. Finally, it is derived from the superfluous and in the term, and he shall put them, and he shall not scatter the ashes. The ruling of the Brisa is that all of the ashes must be placed in the ground, indicates that even after the consecrated item is burned, ashes remain sanctified and are prohibited. And a summary to chapter 7. This chapter stated that as animals consecrated for the altar have inherent sanctity, they can be disqualified as pig or notam or by ritual impurity, and they are disqualified when blemished when they have sustained a wound that will cause them to die within 12 months. By contrast, animals consecrated for temple maintenance cannot be disqualified in any of the aforementioned ways. Additionally, one who slaughters an animal consecrated for the altar outside the temple court is liable to correct if he did so intentionally without forewarning, or to receive lashes if he acts intentionally with forewarning. Furthermore, an animal consecrated for the altar maintains a level of sanctity even after it is redeemed, which means a benefit from its milk and its offspring remains prohibited. None of these halachas apply to animals consecrated for temple maintenance, although there are many prohibitions associated with items consecrated for the altar. These prohibitions apply only to only a select few items: kosher animals, doves and pigeons, flour and oil of meal offerings, and wine used for libations. By contrast, any item of monetary value may be consecrated for the temple maintenance. Another distinction between items consecrated for the altar, and those consecrated for temple maintenance involve the halacha of substitution. One could render an animal exchange for an animal consecrated for the altar substitute, but this cannot be done with animals consecrated for temple maintenance. There are also certain similarities between these categories of consecrated items. For example, one may not alter the designation of a consecrated item from one form of sanctity to another. Nevertheless, one may consecrate any consecrated item with an additional consecration, i.e. consecration of its value, and likewise, one may dedicate a consecrated item. This chapter also discussed the halacha of a consecrated animal that died naturally, from which benefit remains prohibited even after its death. Sacrificial animals that have died are buried, whereas disqualified sacrificial animals and some of the other prohibited items are buried. Items that cannot be burned, e.g. liquids, are burned. In principle, items that are buried may not be burned, and items that are burned may not be buried. So, Baruch Hashem, that's come to the end of the Masech, the Chapter Teruma, and I'm just going to recite the Hadran. Hadran Allah Masechet Teruma Hadran Allah. Datan Allah Masechet Teruma Datach Allah. Lo nisnashei minach Masechet Teruma v'lo nisnashei minan. Lo ba'almo hatein v'lo ba'almon da'asei. He yatzom v'fanecha. Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Yisrael. Yedehei Toroscha u'monuseinu ba'olam hazeh u'shei imonu l'olam haba. Chanina ba'paba, Ramai ba'paba, Nachman ba'paba, Achai ba'paba, Abba Mari ba'paba, Rafon ba'paba, Rachis ba'paba, Shulcha ba'paba, Ada ba'paba, Doru ba'paba. Havna Adonai Eloheinu es tivrei soroscha fina fi amcha b'Yisrael ni'anachna sesei amcha b'Yisrael kloni yodei shemecha le'omnei tzorosecha lishma ma'avei v'tanchimeni mitzvosecha ki l'olam yehidi b'samim b'chukecha leman lo evosh l'olam lo eshkach pekudecha kivam chisani Baruch atah Adonai labdeinu chukecha amen 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 selah va'ed modim anachnu noch modim anachnu lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu Yisrael שהאשמת חלקנו מיושבי בית המקדש ולא השמת חלקנו מיושבי כוונוס שאנו מסכימים והם מסכימים אנו מסכימים לדברי תורה והם מסכימים לדברים בטלים אנו אמנים והם אמנים אנו אמנים מקבלים זכר והם ימנים ואינם מקבלים זכר אנו רוצים והם רוצים ואין רוצים לחיי העולם הבא והם רוצים לבאר שחס שנאמר באת עליהם תורידם לבאר שחס אנשי תומים ומאמר לא יחזו ימיהם ואני אבטח בך יהי רצון מפניך אדוני אלוהי כשם שעזרתני לסיים מסכת תרומה כן תעזרני להשכיל מסכתות וספרים אחרים ולסמם לימוד ולומד לשמוע ולעשות לקיים את כל דברי סומתך באהבה תורתך באהבה וזכות כל התנאים והמוראים ותלמידי חכמים יאמר לי לזרי שלא סמוש התורה מפי ומפי זרי וזרע זרי עד עולם יתקיים בי בהיסה לך תנחה וסך בסך בך תשמור עליך והכיסאוסה היא ששיחך כי בי יהיו ימיך ויוסיפו לך שנות חיים אורך ימים במינו ושמור לו עוז וכבוד אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן אדוני יברך עמו ושלום. Thank you for joining me. Bye.